Now let us discuss another item of deduction, which is the net operating loss carryover, or commonly known as the NOLCO. So NOLCO is different from itemized deduction or optional standard deduction. So which means that NOLCO is in addition to the allowable deduction, except for optional standard deduction. So of course, when a taxpayer claimed the optional standard deduction, the tax law states that the taxpayer can no longer claim as a deduction the itemized deduction and the net operating loss carryover, because that is the rule on optional standard deduction. So the OSD shall be in lieu of the itemized deduction as well as the NOLCO. So, which means that the net operating loss carryover can only be claimed by the taxpayer if such taxpayer claimed the itemized deduction. So, in addition to the itemized deduction, the taxpayer can also deduct the NOLCO from gross income. So, first, let us define net operating loss. So, net operating loss is the excess of allowable deductions over gross income. So, the allowable deduction that we refer here is the itemized deduction. So, which means that net operating loss occur if the itemized deduction is greater than the gross business income. Again, when we say gross income, this refers to the gross business income, because again, it is called net operating loss because it is a result of the business operations of the taxpayer. So in case that the taxpayer is an individual and also earns compensation income, the compensation income is excluded from the computation of net operating loss. So it only relates to business of the taxpayer. So which means that the itemized deduction is greater than the gross business income. So that is the net operating loss. So the net operating loss can only be carried over, so that is the time we can call it NOLCO. So it can be carried forward or carried over on a FIFO basis as a special deduction from gross income. So this is in addition to the itemized deduction. So when can we deduct the NOLCO? The next 3 succeeding years immediately following the year of such loss without interruption. So which means that the NOLCO can be deducted from gross income during the 3 years right after the year the NOLCO has been incurred. And who are the taxpayers that can deduct NOLCO against their gross income? Of course, these taxpayers are all engaged in businesses. So individual taxpayers engaged in trade or business, domestic and resident foreign corporations subject to normal tax. So the non-resident foreign corporation is not part of the taxpayers entitled to deduct NOLCO because non-resident foreign corporations are not being taxed at their net taxable income. They are being taxed at gross income and they are not engaged in trade or business in the Philippines. So that is why they are not entitled to deduct NOLCO. And special corporations subject to normal tax. So if you will notice, these 3 taxpayer classifications are all subject to normal tax. And again, income that is subject to normal tax that is related to business are being taxed at their net taxable income, which means these are the amount after the deduction of business expenses. So also, there are taxpayers who are not entitled to deduct the NOLCO. And who are these? Of course, first is the taxpayers that are exempted from paying taxes. Of course, there is no reason to deduct the NOLCO because you are not subject to the payment of taxes. And the other is the taxpayer who is taxed at their gross income. So which means they are not being taxed at the net taxable amount, which is after the deduction of business expense. So if they are being taxed at their gross income, which means there is no reason to deduct business expenses, including NOLCO. Then, the requisites for the NOLCO to be deducted from gross income is that the NOLCO incurred must be incurred during the year the taxpayer is not exempted from tax, which means that in order for the NOLCO to be deducted in the next 3 succeeding years, the taxpayer must be liable to income tax and it must not be exempted. Then, there should be no substantial change in the ownership of the business. And when we say substantial, the change is more than 75% of the paid up capital. So which means that if there is a change in the paid up capital, but it is less than 75%, which means that there is no substantial change in the ownership and the NOLCO can be deducted. And always remember that the NOLCO is computed on an annual basis, not on a quarterly basis. However, for quarterly filing and paying, the prior period NOLCO can still be claimed as additional deduction. However, the final computation of NOLCO is done on an annual basis. So, to better understand the application of the tax rules governing NOLCO, let us answer an illustrative problem. So for this discussion, we will have 3 problems. So we will illustrate the annual treatment of NOLCO and the quarterly treatment of NOLCO, and if there is a change in ownership of the taxpayer's business. So let us now answer the first problem. So this problem focuses on the application of tax rules on NOLCO for the annual reporting of income tax return. So, Park Sayori has the following information during the taxable years 2020 until 2026. So, the taxpayer is an individual, and he is a mixed income earner because the taxpayer is engaged in business and also earning income from compensation. So Sayori's business is registered as a BMBE or a Barangay Micro Business Enterprise until 2020. And in 2021, after the business was reorganized and expanded, it lost its tax-exempt classification, hence the entity became taxable. In 2025, Sayori claimed the optional standard deduction. The requirement is to compute for the taxable income or net operating loss in each year. So let's start with 2020. Since the taxpayer is an individual mixed income earner, so let us first compute for the taxable business income because the compensation income is simpler. So let us start with sales in 2020. So the sales in 2020 is 500,000 pesos. Then let's deduct the cost of sales of 200,000. Then we have a gross profit of 300,000 pesos. Then since we have no other income that is subject to normal tax, we can now deduct the expenses. So in the problem, there is no information about the allowable deduction that will be claimed by the taxpayer in 2020. The only information is in 2025 that the taxpayer opted the OSD. So which means that in 2020, if the problem is silent, again, by default, it is always the itemized deductions. So again, the OSD will only be deductible if the taxpayer selected such deduction in its first quarter income tax return. So for 2020, we will use the itemized deduction. So the itemized deductions in 2020 is 330,000 pesos. Then let's leave another space for the OSD for the 2025. Then our taxable income or the net operating loss in case the itemized deduction is greater than gross profit is 30,000 pesos. So in 2020, we have a net operating loss because the itemized deduction of 330 is greater than the gross income from business. So let us leave a space also for the NOLCO in case we will have an applied NOLCO for the succeeding years. So for 2020, we have a net operating loss of the 30,000 pesos. So during 2020, the business of the taxpayer resulted to a net loss for tax purposes. However, the taxpayer is still taxable because there is an income subject to normal tax, which is the compensation, because the taxpayer is a mixed income earner. So, what is the treatment for the net operating loss in 2020 with regards to the compensation income? Again, since the 30,000 pesos is related to business and compensation is not business income, so it means that the compensation income cannot be reduced by the amount of net operating loss. Again, because they are from different sources. Always remember that business expenses can only be deducted from gross business income, and there's no way it can be deducted from compensation income. So that is why in 2020 we have a full 300,000 as taxable compensation income. So this is our taxable income for 2020, 300,000. Again, this is not reduced by the amount of net operating loss. Then let's proceed to 2021. So let us compute for the taxable income. So in 2021, our sales is 650,000 pesos. Then the cost of sales is 260,000 pesos. So we have a gross profit of 390,000 pesos. So in 2021, since there is no information again about the allowable deduction selected by the taxpayer, whether it be itemized or OSD, so we will apply the itemized deduction. So that is 331,500. So our taxable income is 58,500. So this time gross profit is greater than the expenses. So we have a net operating loss in 2020. So the question is this allowed to be deducted from the 58,500 taxable income before NOLCO? Again, because the NOLCO can be deducted from the gross income in the 3 succeeding years right after the year the NOLCO was incurred. So, is the 30,000 deductible from 58,500? No, it cannot. And why is that? Because in 2020, the taxpayer's business is registered as a BMBE. And under the Barangay Micro Business Enterprise registration, the business is exempted from tax. So which means that the time the NOLCO or the net operating loss was incurred, the taxpayer's business is tax exempt. That is why in the succeeding 3 years, the net operating loss cannot be deducted. So it failed to comply with that particular requirement. So that is why in 2021, our taxable business income is 58,500. And again, it should not be reduced by the 30,000 pesos net operating loss in 2020. So in 2021, we also have earned a compensation income of 310,000 pesos. So our taxable income in 2021 is 368,500 pesos. So starting 2021, the taxpayer is now no longer tax exempt because starting 2021, the tax-exempt classification of the taxpayer's business under the BMPE has now expired. So, if there will be a net operating loss that will be incurred starting 2021, it is now allowed to be deducted from gross income for 3 years. So, let's start with 2022. So the sales for 2022 is 680. Then let us deduct the cost of sales. So we have a gross profit of 408,000 pesos. Again, the expenses will pertain to the itemized deductions of 428,400. And again, in 2022, the itemized deductions is greater than the gross profits. So we have a net operating loss of 20,400. And again, the 20,400 net operating loss cannot be deducted from the compensation income because the net operating loss can only be deducted from business income. So our taxable income for 2022 is the compensation income of 350,000 pesos. Now we have a net operating loss in 2020, which is 20,400. So does it qualify for the 3-year deductibility against gross income? The answer is yes, because again, as I have said earlier, starting 2021, the taxpayer is now a taxable entity. So if there will be a net operating loss that will be incurred by the taxpayer, it will now qualify under the 3-year deductibility. So the 20,400 can be deducted against gross income from 2023, 2024, and 2025. If the 20,400 remains to be undeducted against gross income until 2025, so the 20,400 or the portion of the 20,400 not yet deducted from gross income will expire, and starting 2026, any portion of the 20,400 not deducted or not claimed as a deduction from gross income is no longer allowed to be deducted starting 2026. So let us let us have a monitoring of the net operating loss. So let us start with the column heading. So the year, so the transactions during the year, whether it is an increase or decrease in the NOLCO. Then the running balance of the NOLCO, because we need to determine the unapplied balance of the NOLCO every year end. Then for 2020, of course, we have no NOLCO as well as in 2021. And in 2022, we have a NOLCO of 20,400. So that is an increase in NOLCO for 20,400. That is why the balance of the NOLCO as of the end of 2022 is 20,400. So now let's compute the taxable income in 2023. So starting with sales of 700,000 pesos, cost of sales of 280,000 pesos. So we have a gross profit of 420,000 pesos. Then let us deduct another itemized deduction of 424,200 pesos. So this time again, we have an itemized deduction that is greater than the gross business income. That is why we have a net operating loss of 4,200. So again, the 4,200 net operating loss cannot be deducted from the taxable compensation income of 320,000 pesos. So that is why the taxable income is the full amount of compensation for 320,000 pesos. So the 4,200 pesos will be added to our monitoring of the NOLCO. So in 2023, our NOLCO will increase by 4,200 pesos. So that is an increase. That is why the running balance, the year-end balance of the NOLCO in 2023 is now 24,600 pesos. So now we have two NOLCO. So the 20,400 in 2022 must be deducted from gross income starting 2023 until 2025. And the 4,200 NOLCO incurred in 2023 must be deducted from gross income until 2026. So if any of these NOLCO will remain undeducted from gross income, it will be expired and cannot be deducted anymore from the gross income beyond the 3-year period. And by the time that we will apply the NOLCO, it will be on a FIFO basis, which means that between 20,400 and 4,200, we will first apply the 20,400 because this amount is incurred first in 2022 compared to 4,200. Now let's proceed to 2024. So the sales is 660,000 pesos. Cost of sales is 264,000 pesos. So we have a gross profit of 396,000 pesos. Then again, we will deduct itemized deduction for 392,040 pesos. So our taxable income or net operating loss in 2024 is 3,960 pesos. So this time, this is a positive amount. So this is a taxable income. So since we have a remaining balance of 24,600 of NOLCO, so is this allowed to be deducted against 3,960 pesos? Of course, the answer is yes, but only up to the extent of the taxable income before the application of NOLCO, which is 3,960 pesos. And again, as I have said, out of the 24,600, we will deduct 3,960, and the 3,960 will be coming from the NOLCO incurred in 2022, which is 20,400. Again, following the FIFO basis. So that is 3,960 pesos. So our taxable business income in 2024 is 0. So that is the taxable business income, 0. However, we have a taxable compensation income in 2024 of 340,000 pesos. So which means we are still taxable at 340,000 pesos. So again, let us update our monitoring. So in 2024, so the 3,960 pesos of NOLCO is applied. So that is to be deducted from the 2022 NOLCO. So which means that out of 20,400, we already deducted 3,960,000 pesos. So that will decrease our balance. Therefore, the ending balance as of 2024 is 20,640 pesos. So now let's proceed to 2025. The sales in 2025 is 690,000 pesos. So in 2025, let's start with sales, 690,000 pesos. And based on the problem in 2025, the taxpayer selected the OSD or optional standard deduction. And since the taxpayer is an individual, it means that selecting OSD means that the cost of sales, the itemized deductions, as well as the NOLCO from prior periods cannot be deducted from gross income, and that is in 2025. So our only deduction will be the OSD of 40%. And the basis of the 40% for an individual taxpayer is the gross sales or gross receipts plus other income from operations. But since we have no other operating income, our only basis is the gross sales of 690,000 pesos. And the 40% of our gross sales is the OSD for 276,000 pesos. So that is 40% of 690,000 pesos. So our taxable income in 2025 will be 414,000 pesos. And again, once OSD selected, we cannot apply the NOLCO from prior period. So our beginning balance of NOLCO for 2025 is 20,640 pesos. So this cannot be deducted against 414,000 pesos. So our taxable business income in 2025 is 414,000 pesos. And this will be added to our taxable compensation income of 360,000 pesos. So that is why our total taxable income, both business and from compensation, is 774,000 pesos. So going back to our monitoring of NOLCO, so there is a scheduled expiration of NOLCO in 2025. And that is from the NOLCO incurred in 2022. So remember that NOLCO can only be deducted 3 years from the date it was incurred. So for the 2022 NOLCO, it will expire in 2025, which means that if the 20,400 remains undeducted from gross income, it will expire and no longer allowed to be deducted from gross income starting 2026. So which means that in 2025, there will be a decrease in our available NOLCO because of the expiration. And how much will be the amount to be expired? That is 16,440. So the 16,440 is computed as 20,400 less 3,960 that was applied in 2024. So the expired portion is 6,440 pesos, which means this amount will no longer be allowed to be deducted from gross income starting 2026. And because of this, our ending balance for 2025 will be 4,200. So if you notice that the 4,200 ending balance for 2025 pertains to the NOLCO incurred in 2022. 2023, who is also scheduled to expire in 2026, which is 3 years after 2023. So now let us proceed to 2026, the last year available provided in our problem. So for 2026, since there is no available information as to itemize or OSD was selected by the taxpayer, of course, our default deduction is itemize. So starting with sales of 750,000, we can now deduct the cost of sales of 300. So that is why our gross profit is 450,000 pesos. And our itemized deduction in 2026 is 436,500. And that is why our taxable income is 13,500. And the question is, can this be reduced by the amount of available NOLCO? So our NOLCO at the start of 2026 is 4,200. The answer is yes, of course. The 4,200 can be deducted from the 13,500. So which means that the taxable business income after the applied NOLCO is 9,300 pesos. And of course, this will be added to the taxable compensation in 2026 of 360,000 pesos. That is why our total taxable income from both compensation and business is 369,300. And since we applied a NOLCO of 4,200 in 2026, which means that this has an effect on our monitoring of NOLCO. So for 2026, we applied a total of 4,200, which is the full amount of NOLCO incurred in 2023. So that will decrease our NOLCO balance, and therefore our ending balance of NOLCO for 2026 is 0. So this means that the 4,200 NOLCO incurred in 2023 was all used and no portion has expired. Now let us answer another problem. So the problem focuses on the quarterly filing of income tax return. So what is the applicable rules for the NOLCO during the quarterly preparation of income tax return? So ABC company has the following information. So we have tax information for 2 years, 2020 and 2021. And we have an information during each quarter for both years. So gross sales, cost of sales, and itemized deductions. So looking into the data, so the information is non-cumulative because the amounts are not consistently increasing as during the year. So this is a non-cumulative data. So first, let us compute for the first quarter taxable income in 2020. So additional information states that the entity has an unapplied 4,000 pesos NOLCO from 2019. So which means that the operations, which means that the 2019 annual income tax return reported a net operating loss of 4,000 pesos. So to compute for the taxable income in 2020, so let's start with gross sales. So for the first quarter, we have 200,000 pesos. So our cost of sales is 80,000 pesos. Then our gross profit for the first quarter is 120,000 pesos. Then let us deduct the itemized deduction. So 114,000 pesos. So we have a taxable income of 6,000 pesos. So since in 2019 we have a net operating loss of 4,000 pesos, and it means that it can be deducted from the gross income in 2020, 2021 until 2022, which is 3 years from 2019. And again, it can only be deducted once the taxpayer selected the itemized deduction. So in problem 1, we are able to deduct the NOLCO on an annual basis based on the first problem that we have answered. But for quarterly filing, the question is this also allowed to be deducted on a quarterly basis? So the answer is yes. So the 4,000 NOLCO in 2019 can be deducted in the first quarter taxable income of the taxpayer. So which means since during the first quarter, we have a taxable income of 6,000 pesos, that is before the application of prior period NOLCO, we can deduct the NOLCO of 4,000 pesos in full. So to determine the taxable income for the first quarter. So that is 4,000. So after we deduct the NOLCO, our remaining taxable income is 2,000 pesos. So this is the taxable income for the first quarter of 2020. So let us now proceed to the second quarter. So on a quarterly basis, the filing of the income tax return is based on cumulative amounts. So which means that the income tax return must include reports about the cumulative tax information of the taxpayer. So when we compute for the taxable income, it must be cumulative, which means that the information that is included in the tax return should be the information generated starting first quarter of the taxable year. So that is why when we report gross sales for the second quarter filing, it doesn't mean that the gross sales that we will report only includes the gross sales during the second quarter. So cumulative means that the gross sales to be reported must be the gross sales generated starting first quarter, including the second quarter. So the cumulative gross sales is 500,000 pesos, and that is 200,000 plus 300,000 pesos. So same goes with cost of sale. So that is also cumulative. So this is 200,000 pesos. So the gross profit is 300,000 pesos. So the cost of sales of 200 is computed as the total of 80,000 and 120,000 pesos. Then for the itemized deduction, it should also be cumulative. So the cumulative amount is 327,000 pesos. So the cumulative taxable income for the second quarter is 27,000 pesos, which means it is not a taxable income. It is a net operating loss. So the 27,000 net operating loss means that starting first quarter until the end of the second quarter, we did not earn any taxable income. Instead, we incurred a net operating loss. So which means that the taxable income that we have earned in the first quarter were covered by the increase in the itemized deduction by the second quarter. Because if you will notice that the itemized deduction during the second quarter significantly increased compared to itemized deductions during the first quarter. So that is why we have a net operating loss for the 6-month period. Again, the second quarter tax information should include the 6-month period during the taxable quarter. Now let us compute for the third quarter income tax return filing. Again, for the third quarter filing, it must be cumulative, which means it should cover gross sales for 9 months, and the 9 months worth of gross sales is 700,000 pesos. Then for the cost of sales, the 9 months worth of cost of sales is 280,000 pesos, and the gross profit during the 9-month period is 420,000 pesos. And for the itemized deductions, the 9-month worth of itemized deduction is to 403,200. Again, always remember that we are reporting on a cumulative basis. So on the first quarter filing, it should cover information during the first 3 months. Then for the second quarter filing, it should cover the first 6 months of the taxable year. And for the third quarter, it should cover 9 months of information during the taxable year. So for the taxable income for the 9-month period ending September 30, because the end of the third quarter is September 30 in case of a calendar year. So we have a taxable income of 16,800. So again, the 16,800 is the 9-month worth of taxable income, which means it started January of the taxable year. So which means that it includes the 6,000 taxable income we generated in the first quarter. So which means that we can also deduct the NOLCO applied during the first quarter because the 6,000 taxable income is part of the 16,800. So which means that the 4,000 NOLCO applied in the first quarter can also be deducted during the third quarter. So which means that the taxable net income of the taxpayer at the end of the third quarter is 12,800. So the income tax due that will be computed for the 9-month period will be based on the 12,800 pesos. Going back to second quarter, we have a net operating loss of 27,000 pesos. So will it be part of the net operating loss that will be deducted 3 years immediately after the year it was incurred? So the answer is no, because the NOLCO, the net operating loss carryover, must be incurred during the taxable year. Again, always remember that NOLCO is computed on an annual basis, not on a quarterly basis. So any net operating loss computed during the first, second, and third quarter is not final. The final net operating loss is the net operating loss that is computed at fourth quarter. So which means it will be the result of the operation during the taxable year. But the application of NOLCO, which means that the deduction of NOLCO from prior period against the taxable income may be done on a quarterly basis. So next is the fourth quarter. So let's proceed to the fourth quarter. So the fourth quarter information will include the 12-month period. So which means this is the annual filing of income tax return. So let us now proceed to the fourth quarter. So for the fourth quarter, this should include information covering the 12 months of the taxable year. So which means this is already the annual filing of the income tax return. So let's start with the gross sales. So the gross sales for the 12-month period is 925,000 pesos. Then the cost of sales for 12 months is 370,000 pesos. Then the gross profit for the year is 555,000 pesos. Then the itemized deductions for the year is 566,100. And we have a net operating loss of 11,100 pesos. So this is the final net operating loss for the year. So which means that for the 12-month period, we have not earned any taxable income. Instead, we have a net operating loss because the gross profit for the 12-month period is 555,000, which is less than the itemized deductions for the 12-month period, which is at 566,100. So which means that any taxable income computed during the quarterly filing as well as the net operating loss is not yet final. The final taxable income or net operating loss is computed on an annual basis. So for 2020, we have no taxable income. Instead, we have a net operating loss of 11,100 pesos. So this means that we should not pay any tax liability for the year 2020. However, during the first quarter and third quarter, obviously, we already paid an income tax for these quarters because we computed a taxable income. But when we consider the information during the fourth quarter, we should have not paid any tax liability pertaining to 2020 because we have a net operating loss for the year of 11,100. So any quarterly payments made during 2020 can be deducted from the income tax due in 2021. So that will be a tax credit. So let us now monitor our net operating loss carryover. So for 2020, we have a beginning balance of 4,000 pesos because that is the NOLCO that was incurred in 2019. So the question is the 4,000 applied during the year 2020? So the answer is the NOLCO will not decrease by 4,000. Instead, it will increase by 11,100. And the total NOLCO as of the end of the year is 15,100, which means that the 4,000 pesos NOLCO incurred in 2019 is not actually applied in 2020. Why? Because again, the final amount of NOLCO and the final application of NOLCO happens on the annual income tax return. Any report during the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter are not yet final because it may be reversed during the annual income tax return. Just like in 2020, the annual return reported a net operating loss of 11,100. And since in 2020, we did not report any taxable income, which means that the 2019 net operating loss carryover of 4,000 cannot be deducted in 2020 because we did not report a taxable income for the year. Again, the quarterly information are always not final. The final amounts are in the annual income tax return. Now let's start with 2021. So for 2021, gross sales during the first quarter is 210,000 pesos. And since this is the first quarter, it will only cover 3 months. So next is cost of sales. The 3 months worth of cost of sale is 84,000 pesos. Then the gross profit is 126,000 pesos. So our itemized deduction is 118,000 pesos. And we have a taxable income of 8,000 pesos. Again, since we have a taxable income during the first quarter and NOLCO from the prior period can be deducted, can be applied against taxable income on a quarterly basis, so we can deduct the NOLCO. How much NOLCO can we deduct? So our available NOLCO is 15,100 because that is the ending in 2020, which means this is the beginning balance for 2021. So we have an available of 15,100 NOLCO, and we have a taxable income during the first quarter of 8,000 pesos, which means we can deduct an amount of NOLCO for 8,000 pesos because the 15,100 NOLCO can cover the full amount of 8,000 pesos taxable income. So at the end of the first quarter for 2021, we have no taxable income, which means that we will pay no tax liability for the first quarter. Again, the 8,000 NOLCO applied during the first quarter is not the final amount of NOLCO applied in 2021 because the final NOLCO applied in 2021 will happen at the end of the year, which is the fourth quarter, because the information should include for the 12-month period. Let us now proceed to the second quarter. So for the second quarter, this will cover 6 months of information. So the gross sales is 210,000 plus 300,000 pesos. So that is 510,000 for the first 6 months of 2021. Then the cost of sales for the 6 months is 204,000 pesos. So the gross profit is 306,000 pesos. Then let us deduct the itemized deductions for the first 6 months of 2021. So that is 291,000 pesos. Then the taxable income for the first 6 months is 15,000 pesos. So we have a taxable income of 15,000 for the second quarter. And this covers the first 6-month period of 2021. And which means that it includes the 8,000 taxable income during the first quarter. And during the first quarter, we applied an 8,000 NOLCO, which came from the 15,100 available balance at the start of 2021. So the question is, Since the taxable income for the second quarter is 15,000 pesos cumulative, are we allowed to deduct NOLCO from the 15,000 pesos? The answer is yes. But for how much? So the amount to be deducted is 15,000 pesos. So we have no taxable income for the second quarter, which is for the first 6-month period. And why did we deduct the 15,000 pesos? If out of 15,100, we already deducted 8,000 pesos at the end of the first quarter. So since the 15,000 includes the 8,000 taxable income the first quarter, which means that we must also deduct the NOLCO of 8,000 during the second quarter. Because the 8,000 taxable income in the first quarter is also part of the 15,000 pesos. Which means that the 8,000 NOLCO applied in the first quarter must also be part of the NOLCO applied for the second quarter. So which means that this 15,000 is not addition to the 8,000. The 15,000 NOLCO applied here includes the NOLCO applied in the first quarter. Again, because we are reporting on a cumulative basis. So if the 15,000 NOLCO applied here in the second quarter includes the 8,000 NOLCO applied in the first quarter, we added 7,000 pesos NOLCO applied during the second quarter. Because again, after deducting the 8,000 NOLCO in the first quarter from 15,100, we have a balance of 7,100. Which means that if the 15,000 includes the 8,000 NOLCO applied in the first quarter, we added 7,000 NOLCO, which is still taken from the 15,100 in order to deduct from the taxable income for the second quarter. So the 15,000 pesos is taken from the 15,100. So after deducting the 15,000 from the 15,100, the available balance as of the end of the second quarter is 100 pesos. And again, it is not yet final because the final application of NOLCO is being done on an annual basis. Because this information may still be reversed during the third quarter or fourth quarter depending on the results of the operations for the third quarter and fourth quarter. So let us now proceed to the third quarter. So for the third quarter, our gross sales is 714,000 pesos. And again, this covers the first 9 months of 2021 because this is cumulative. So the cost of sales for the 9-month period is 286,000 pesos. So the gross profit is 428,000 pesos. So we have an itemized deduction of 467,000 pesos. And we have a net operating loss of 39,000 pesos. So the 39,000 pesos net operating loss for the third quarter is not only during the third quarter, starting July to September. The 39,000 net operating loss covers the operations for the first 9 months. So which means that the results of operation during the third quarter reverses the taxable income during the first quarter and the second quarter. Because if you notice that the gross sales during the third quarter is significantly lower compared to the second quarter or the first quarter, that is why we have a net operating loss. It means that if the 39,000 net operating loss covers the period starting January until September 30 of 2021, it means that there should be no NOLCO applied during the first quarter and second quarter. Again, because NOLCO can only be deducted from taxable income. And since the third quarter period, which is cumulative, reported a net operating loss, it means that there should be no amount of the 15,000 is allowed to be deducted from taxable income because we have no taxable income. We have a net operating loss for the third quarter. So this is the reason why the application of NOLCO or computation of NOLCO is only final during the annual income tax return because any NOLCO computed and applied during the first, second, and third quarter are not yet final because they may be reversed during the fourth quarter filing. So this means that the 15,100 NOLCO is still available for the fourth quarter filing in case that the fourth quarter resulted to a taxable income. So for the third quarter, we have a net operating loss of 39,000 pesos. And again, the 39,000 pesos will not be added to the 15,100. Again, because this might be reversed during the fourth quarter information for 2021. So let us now compute for the fourth quarter information. So the fourth quarter is 944,000 for gross sales. And this is covering the 12-month period of 2021. Then the cost of sales for the year, which covers 12 months, is 378,000 pesos. Then the gross profit is 566,000 for the year. Then the itemized deduction for the year is 538,000 pesos. So we have a taxable income of 28,000 pesos. Again, the net operating loss during the 9-month period of 2021 is reversed during the fourth quarter operations. So which means that for the year, we have a taxable income of 28,000 pesos. And the 28,000 pesos is already the annual information in the income tax return. So the final result for 2021 is a taxable income of 28,000 pesos. And since this is already the final figure for the year, we can now apply the final amount of NOLCO against 28,000 because this is already the annual income tax return. And again, our available balance is 15,100 pesos. So out of 28,000 pesos taxable income, only 15,100 NOLCO can be applied because our available balance is only 15,100 pesos. So which means that we have a taxable income for 2021 of 12,900 pesos. And this is the final result for the year 2021. Just like in 2020, the final result in 2020 is a net operating loss of 11,100. So it means that any taxable income reported in the first quarter and the third quarter in 2020 are just temporary. So these are not final figures because the final result of operation for tax purposes is determined during the fourth quarter period, which covers the 12-month period of the taxable year. So let us now update our NOLCO. So in 2021, our beginning balance is 15,100. So again, in 2020, the NOLCO increased by 11,100 because the result of operation in 2020 has a net operating loss of 11,100. So instead of decreasing the NOLCO of 4,000, it increased to 15,100 by the end of the year 2020. So this is our beginning balance for 2021. And in 2021, the result of operation is taxable income. And we applied NOLCO in 2021 for the amount of 15,100 pesos. So we exhaust the balance of NOLCO of 15,100 because our taxable income for the year 2021 is 28,000 pesos. So that is why the ending balance of NOLCO for 2021 is 0. Again, always remember that the NOLCO is only updated on an annual basis. So which means that the NOLCO will only increase by the net operating loss computed at fourth quarter. And the NOLCO that is to be applied is the NOLCO applied at the end of the fourth quarter. So we can also compute our taxable income on a quarterly basis in some other format. So this is another format or computation of the quarterly filing of income tax return, and this is patterned on the quarterly income tax return. In the previous format that we did, we are reporting all the information on a cumulative basis. So by this time, we will report first the operations during the specific quarter. So this time it is non-cumulative. So let us start computing the taxable income for the first quarter. So for the first quarter, this is almost similar to the previous format that we did. So our gross sales for the first quarter is 200,000 pesos. Cost of sales is 80,000 pesos. Then we have gross profit of 120. Then let us deduct the itemized deduction of 114. So we have a taxable income of 6,000 pesos. So for the first quarter, we have a taxable income of 6,000 pesos, and this is also the answer we have computed in the previous format. So the first procedure is to compute for the taxable income or the net operating loss for that quarter. Again, it is non-cumulative. But still, regardless of the format, it should always be on a cumulative basis. So what we will do is we will add the prior quarter taxable income. So this only applies for the second quarter, third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Of course, this is the first quarter, so we have no prior quarter taxable income. So for the first quarter, we have 6,000 pesos. And since this is a taxable income, we have deducted the 4,000 NOLCO in 2019. That is why the taxable income subject to tax at the end of first quarter is 2,000 pesos. Then let's go to second quarter. Again, the 4,000 NOLCO deducted in the first quarter is not yet final because as I have said, the final application of NOLCO happens at the end of the year. That is why we only monitor our NOLCO only on an annual basis, not on a quarterly basis. So our gross sales is 300,000 pesos, and this is already non-cumulative. So this is only for the second quarter. It does not include the 200,000 gross sales during the first quarter. So the cost of sales only for the second quarter is 120. Again, this is only for April, May, and June. So the gross profit during the second quarter is 180,000 pesos, and our itemized deduction is 213. So we have a net operating loss specifically for the second quarter at 33,000 pesos. So this is only the result of operation for the second quarter. It does not include the 6,000 taxable income during the first quarter. So the 33,000 is non-cumulative. Again, regardless of the format, the presentation or reporting should always be on a cumulative basis. That is why we need to add the 6,000 taxable income we computed during the first quarter. So the taxable income or net operating loss to date, which is already the cumulative amount, is 27,000 NOLCO. And if you will remember, this is the net operating loss we have computed in the previous format. And since the 27 is net operating loss, so we cannot deduct any NOLCO, and this will not be included in our update of net operating loss. Again, because the update of net operating loss carryover is done on an annual basis, because the 27,000 net operating loss was reversed during the end of the 2020 based on the previous format. So for the third quarter, the gross sales is 200, cost of sale is 80, the gross profit is 120, then the itemized deduction is 76,200. So the taxable income for the third quarter, so which means this is from July to September, is 43,800. So this is non-cumulative. Then we will add the taxable income or net operating loss during the previous quarters, and that is 27,000 net operating loss. So the 27,000 is the result of operation for the 6-month period, which is from January to June. So our cumulative balance is 16,800. So that is already for 9 months. So this time it is now cumulative. Then, since this is 16,800, we can deduct the 4,000 NOLCO in 2019. So the taxable income for the third quarter is 12,800. Again, we deducted the 4,000 NOLCO because the 6,000 taxable income is part of the 16,800 taxable income for the third quarter. So that is why the NOLCO deducted in the first quarter can also be deducted during the third quarter. Again, because the 6,000 is part of the 16,800. Now let's go to the fourth quarter of 2020. So the fourth quarter for 2020 will start at gross sales of 225, cost of sales of 90, then we have a gross profit of 135,000 pesos. Then our itemized deduction is 162,900. Then the net operating loss for the fourth quarter, again this is non-cumulative. This row is non-cumulative. So this is 27,900. So this is for the October to December operations. Again, we need to report the cumulative amount. So from 27,900, we will add the previous quarter taxable income of 16,800 because this already covers the 9-month period. So to cover the 12 months, we have a total of 11,100. So this is our net operating loss. And this is also the same answer we have computed based on the previous format. And again, since this is the last quarter for the year, we can now update our net operating loss carryover. So which means that the 4,000 NOLCO in 2019 was not applied in 2020 because instead of decreasing the NOLCO, it increased in 2019. So how much is the increase in 2019? It is 11,100. So now let us proceed to 2021. So for 2021, we will use the same format. So for first quarter, we have 210,000. Cost of sale is 84. So we have a gross profit of 126. So deduct the itemized deduction, we have a taxable income of 8,000 pesos. And again, since our result of operation for the first quarter of 2021 is a taxable income, we can now deduct our NOLCO from the previous years, which has a balance of 15,100. So the amount of NOLCO that can be applied during the first quarter is 8,000 pesos. Of course, only up to the extent of the taxable income. So, which means that at the end of the first quarter, we have no taxable income. Therefore, there is no tax liability. So again, for this format, the amounts are initially non-cumulative. So the gross sales for the second quarter is 300,000 pesos. Then cost of sales is 120. So gross profit is 180. Then the itemized deduction is 173. So for the second quarter only, which is from April to June, the taxable income is 7,000 pesos. So it does not include the 8,000 taxable income during the first quarter. So that is why to report a cumulative amount, we need to add the 8,000 pesos. So that the taxable income on a cumulative basis is 15,000 pesos. And the 15,000 pesos taxable income covers the first 6 months of 2021. And again, we can deduct NOLCO. So how much NOLCO can we deduct? 15,000 pesos. Again, why 15,000 pesos? Because the 8,000 taxable income in the first quarter is part of the 15,000 pesos, which means that the 8,000 applied NOLCO in the first quarter is also part of the 15,000 pesos. And we just added 7,000 pesos. So there is no taxable income in second quarter. So let's proceed to third quarter. So for the third quarter, we have a gross sales of 204. Again, this is non-cumulative. The cost of sales is 82,000. Gross profit is 122. Then we have an itemized deduction of 176. So for the third quarter only, we have a net operating loss of 54,000 pesos. So that is only from July to September. And of course, we must report the accumulative balance. So which means we need to add the first 6 months result of operation, which is 15,000 pesos. So that is the taxable income from January to June. So for the 9-month period, the result is a net operating loss of 39,000 pesos. And again, this row is the cumulative balance. So which means that during the first 9 months, we have a net operating loss of 39,000. So which means there will be no tax liability again for the third quarter. And the 39,000 pesos net operating loss computed at the end of third quarter is not added to the NOLCO balance of 15,100. Again, because this is not yet the fourth quarter. Again, always remember that the NOLCO is only computed on an annual basis. So for the fourth quarter, our gross sales is 230,000. Cost of sales is 92,000. Then we have a gross profit of 138. The itemized deduction is 71,000. So we have a taxable income of 67,000 pesos. Again, this is only for October to December, which is non-cumulative. And since we need to report a cumulative amount, we need to add the result of operation from January to September, which is 39,000 net operating loss. So for the year, the result is a taxable income of 28,000 pesos. And since this is already the annual report, this is already the final amount. So the final result of the year is a taxable income of 28,000. So this will define the amount of NOLCO to be deducted. And this is the final application of NOLCO for 2021. So our beginning balance is 15,100 and our taxable income is 28,000 pesos, which means we can deduct in full the 15,100. So after deducting the available NOLCO of 15,100, our taxable income for 2021 is 12,900. So if we will compare the two side by side, so this is the first format that we did, and this is the second format that we did. So regardless of the format, the result should always be similar. So this is 2,000, negative 27, 12,8, 11,1, negative. So this is also the result. So they are the same. As well as for 2021. So they are the same. So they have different format but similar answers. So it is your choice on what presentation would you prefer. But for income tax reporting, the income tax is patterned on this format. So if you will look at the quarterly income tax return, so this is the applicable presentation. So let us now proceed to the last problem for net operating loss carryover. So this is focused on the changes in ownership. So DEF company has the following results of operations. So our taxpayer is DEF company. So Janga company owns 90% of DEF company's outstanding ordinary shares. However, in 2021, Janga's ownership decreased to 80% after it sold some of its shares to Park Sojon. On January 1, 2022, Janga Company sold its remaining shares to Dambam Corporation. So let us compute the taxable income or net operating loss in each year. So let's start with 2020. So to compute for the taxable income, so for 2020, we have 1.5 million. Let us deduct the 600,000 cost of sales. So we have a gross profit of 900,000 pesos. Then let us deduct our itemized deductions. So this time we have both regular and special itemized deductions. So the total is 945,000 pesos. So our result is a negative 45,000 pesos, and this is a net operating loss. So of course, our net operating loss for the year will be 45,000 pesos, and this will be deductible against taxable income during the 3 succeeding years after 2020. So that is until 2023. So provided, of course, there should be no substantial change in ownership. So let us include this in our monitoring of the NOLCO. So for the NOLCO, we have no beginning balance of NOLCO as of 2020. So in 2020, it increased to 45,000 pesos. So there is no applied NOLCO during 2020, so that is why our ending balance of NOLCO is 45,000 pesos. So now let's proceed to 2021. So let us compute for the taxable income. So for 2021, we have a gross sales of 1.25 million, cost of sales of 500,000, so we have a gross profit of 750,000 pesos. So our total itemized deductions, including both regular and special, is 731,250 pesos. So we have a taxable income of 18,750 pesos. And since our result is a taxable income and we have an available NOLCO at the end of 2020, which is 45,000 pesos, which means that the taxable income of 18,750 can still be reduced by the amount of available NOLCO. Of course, only up to the extent of the taxable income. And since we have a taxable income of 18,750, we can only deduct the amount of 18,750 from the 45,000 available NOLCO. So that is why as of 2021, we have no taxable income, which means that DEF company has no tax liability. So again, in 2021, NOLCO is allowed to be applied against taxable income although there is a change in ownership. Because in 2021, it says that Janga's ownership has decreased to 80%, which means there is a portion that is sold during the year. So the NOLCO is still allowed to be applied in 2021, though there is a change in ownership that occurred in 2021, because the change is not considered as substantial. Again, when we say substantial change, the change should be at least 75% of the paid-up capital of the taxpayer. However, the number of shares sold by Janga Company, which is a shareholder of DF Company, is not considered as substantial because it only involves 10% of the paid-up capital of the corporation. So let us now update our monitoring of NOLCO for 2021. So we will start with a beginning balance of 45,000 pesos. And of course, there is no increase in 2021. So our available is still 45,000 pesos. However, there is an applied NOLCO during the year, which is 18,750 pesos. Then to continue with the additional information, on January 1, 2022, Janga Company sold its remaining shares to Dambam Corporation. So which means that in 2022, there is again a change in the ownership, and this time it is more than 75% because in 2021, the remaining shares of Janga is 80% of the total outstanding shares of the AF company after it sold some to Park Sojon. However, on January 1, 2022, which is the start of 2022, all the 80% were sold to Dambam Corporation, which means that there is a substantial change in ownership that occurred in 2022. So this time, our available balance of NOLCO of 26,250, which is computed as 45,000 less 18,750, can no longer be deducted starting 2022 because there is already a substantial change in ownership, which means that the 26,252 will be automatically expired as of the date before the substantial change in ownership. So which means that we will start the year 2022 with no available NOLCO. So that is due to the change in ownership of more than 75%. So the 26,250 will all expire before the start of 2022. So that is zero balance for our NOLCO. So let us now compute the taxable income for 2022. So we have a gross sales of 1.4 million, cost of sales, and our gross profit is 840,000 pesos. So our total itemized deduction is 856,800. So we have a net operating loss in 2022 for 16,800. So this time in 2022, we will have again another amount for NOLCO that can be deducted from gross income until 2025, which is 3 years after 2022. Again, the 26,250 NOLCO that is expired in 2021 can no longer be deducted in 2022 until 2023, again because there is a substantial change in ownership of 80%. So let us now update our monitoring of NOLCO. So we have no beginning balance because the 26,250 again has expired in 2021. So during the current year, it increased by 16,800 pesos. So our available balance is 16,800 pesos. And that is also the ending balance for the year 2022. So for the last year, 2023, let us start computing the taxable income. So the gross sales is 1.6 million and our cost of sales is 640,000 pesos. So we have a total itemized deductions of 950,400 and our taxable income is 9,600 pesos. This time in 2023, we have a taxable income. And since we have an available NOLCO of 16,800, we can deduct only up to an amount of 9,600 pesos. So that is a taxable income of 0. So which means in 2023, the taxpayer is not liable for income tax. So let us update our NOLCO. So for 2023, we will start the year with a 16,800 balance of NOLCO. And instead of increasing, it will be decreased by the amount of NOLCO applied in 2023, which is 9,600 pesos. So by the end of the year, our balance will be 7,200 pesos. And this will be available to be deducted against gross income until 2025 because the 7,200 was originally incurred in 2022, which is part of the 16,800 NOLCO in 2022. So the 16,800 NOLCO in 2022 is still allowed to be deducted in 2023 because it was incurred after the substantial change in ownership. So which means that any NOLCO that was incurred prior to the substantial change in ownership, it will be expired and will no longer be allowed to be deducted from gross income. That is why the 26,250, which was incurred prior to the 80% change, is expired in full in 2021. However, the 16,800 NOLCO that was incurred after the 80% change is still allowed to be deducted from the taxable income 3 years after 2022. So these are our discussion on net operating loss carryover.